The cargo ship Nabi moved slowly through the dark space between stars. It was a small ship, old but well-maintained, carrying medical supplies to a mining colony 3 days away. The captain, a man named Tay, sat in the pilot's seat and watched the endless black through the window. "We should go around the asteroid field," said Yuna from behind him. She was the ship's engineer, a woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper tongue. "Going through it will cost us time if we hit something. Going around will cost us fuel," Tay replied without turning. "We go through." Minho, the youngest of the 3 crew members, looked up from his communication station. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange. There's a signal coming from inside the asteroid field." Tay leaned forward. "What kind of signal?" "Distress beacon. It's very weak. It's fading in and out." Yuna crossed her arms. "Could be old. Could be a trap. Pirates use fake distress signals all the time. Could also be someone dying," Tay said quietly. He changed the ship's course toward the signal. Yuna sighed but said nothing. She had worked with Tay for 5 years. She knew that look in his eyes. Once he decided to help someone, nothing would change his mind. The Nabi entered the asteroid field carefully. Rocks of all sizes floated around them, some small as fists, others large as mountains. Tay guided the ship between them with practiced skill. After 20 minutes of careful flying, they found the source of the signal. It was a ship, or what was left of one. The wreckage spread across a wide area, pieces of metal and glass spinning slowly in the zero gravity. The ship had been beautiful once. Even destroyed, Tay could see the elegant design, the golden decorations, the strange symbols carved into the hull. This was not a normal ship. This was something expensive, something important. "That's not human design," Minho said, his voice nervous. No, Tay agreed. "It's not." Yuna stepped closer to the window. "Those blast marks. Someone attacked this ship. Recently, the metal is still hot in some places." Tay was already standing up. "I'm going out there. Are you crazy?" Yuna grabbed his arm. "We don't know what happened here. We don't know who attacked them, or if they're still nearby. And that's an alien ship. We don't even know what species." "Someone sent a distress signal," Tay said simply. "That means someone might still be alive." He pulled on his spacesuit and checked his oxygen levels. Minho handed him a medical kit and a flashlight. Yuna watched with worried eyes but helped him seal his helmet. 15 minutes, she said firmly. "If you're not back in 15 minutes, I'm coming to get you." Tay nodded and stepped into the airlock. The silence of space surrounded him as he floated toward the wreckage. He moved carefully, pushing off debris and pulling himself along broken pieces of the ship. He found bodies. Tall alien creatures with silver skin and 4 arms, dressed in what looked like military uniforms. Guards, probably. All dead. The distress signal grew stronger as he moved deeper into the wreckage. He found a section of the ship that was mostly intact. A room of some kind. The door was damaged, but he managed to force it open inside. He found her. She was small, much smaller than the dead guards outside. A child, or at least the alien version of one. Her skin was silver like the others, but it was flickering, glowing weakly like a dying light. She had 4 arms like the adults, but they were thin and delicate. On her head was something like a crown, made of the same silver material as her skin, growing directly from her skull. Her eyes were closed. There was blood everywhere. A piece of metal had gone through her side. Tay moved quickly. He checked for breathing. Yes, she was still alive, but barely. He opened his medical kit and began working. He was not a doctor, but he had been a military medic many years ago. He knew how to stop bleeding. He knew how to stabilize a patient long enough to get them to real help. He worked fast, his hands steady despite the strange silver blood that covered his gloves. He sealed the wound as best as he could and wrapped her body in a thermal blanket. Then he picked her up carefully and began the journey back to the Nabi. Yuna was waiting at the airlock. When she saw what Tay was carrying, her face went pale. "Is that?" "She's hurt," Tay said, moving past her. "Clear the medical bay." For the next 3 hours, Tay worked to save the alien girl's life. He cleaned her wounds, gave her fluids through a tube in her arm, and monitored her strange heartbeat. Her biology was different from humans, but not so different that he could not help her. She had blood. She had organs. She could be saved when she was finally stable. Tae sat down heavily in a chair and closed his eyes. Minho appeared in the doorway. His face was white. "Captain, I decoded some of the data from the ship's black box, and—" Minho swallowed hard. That ship belonged to the Valari Empire. Tae opened his eyes. The Valari Empire. Every human knew that name. They were one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. They controlled hundreds of star systems. They lived for centuries. And they did not like humans. For decades, there had been tension between human space and Valari space. Not open war, but close to it. Very close. "There's more," Minho continued, his voice shaking. "That girl you saved. According to the ship's records, she's Princess Lyra, daughter of Queen Velith." The room went silent. Queen Velith, the ruler of the entire Valari Empire. A being so old and powerful that other species told stories about her like she was a god? And Tae had just saved her daughter. Yuna entered the room. She had heard everything. "We need to drop her at the nearest station and disappear. Now? Tonight?" "We can't do that," Tae said. "Why not?" "Tae, think about this. The Valari hate humans. When they find out a human ship was near their princess when she was attacked, they won't ask questions. They'll assume we did it. They'll hunt us down and kill us. She needs medical care that stations cannot provide. She needs to go home." Yuna stared at him. "You want to take her to Valari space? To the empire that thinks all humans are barbaric animals? They'll execute us the moment we cross the border." Tae stood up and looked at the unconscious girl on the medical bed. She looked so small, so fragile. Just a child, caught in something she did not understand. "Someone tried to kill her," he said quietly. "They destroyed her ship and murdered her guards. If we leave her at a station, whoever did this might find her and finish the job." "That's not our problem," Yuna insisted. Tae turned to face her. "I'm making it our problem." He walked to the cockpit and sat in the pilot's seat. His hands moved across the controls, setting a new course. Minho and Yuna followed him, watching in disbelief. Anna said, her voice softer now. "This could get us killed." "I know. Then why?" Tae was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Because she's just a kid. And she needs help." The Nabi turned slowly in the darkness of space and began its journey toward the heart of the Valari Empire. The journey to Valari. Space would take 11 days. 11 days of flying through empty space, avoiding busy trade routes, hoping that no one would notice a small human cargo ship heading toward alien territory. For the first 2 days, the girl did not wake up. Tae checked on her every few hours, monitoring her wounds, making sure she was still breathing. Her silver skin had stopped flickering and now glowed with a soft, steady light. That seemed like a good sign. On the 3rd day, she opened her eyes. Tae was sitting beside her bed when it happened. One moment she was sleeping peacefully, the next her eyes flew open and she screamed. She tried to get up, tried to run, but her body was too weak. She fell back onto the bed, all 4 of her arms reaching out, trying to push Tae away. "It's okay," Tae said calmly, keeping his distance. "You're safe. No one is going to hurt you." The girl stared at him with wide, frightened eyes. They were beautiful eyes, Tae noticed. Silver like her skin, but with tiny spots of light inside them, like stars. "Human," she whispered. Her voice was weak and rough. "You are human, yes." Fear crossed her face. "Where am I? What do you want from me?" "You're on my ship. I found you in the wreckage of your vessel. You were badly hurt. I've been taking care of you." She looked down at her bandaged body, at the tubes connected to her arms, at the blanket covering her. Slowly, the fear in her eyes changed to confusion. "You saved me?" "Yes." "Why?" Tae considered the question. "Because you needed help." The girl did not seem to understand. She looked at him like he was speaking a language she had never heard before. Then exhaustion took over and her eyes closed again. She slept for another full day. When she woke again, she was calmer. She told them her name was Lyra. She was young by Valari standards, not yet 100 years old. The crown-like growth on her head marked her as royalty. She was the only daughter of Queen Velith. "My ship was attacked," Lyra said softly. She was sitting up now, drinking a warm soup that Yuna had made for her. "We were traveling to a meeting with my mother's advisors. Then there were explosions. Fire. My guards tried to protect me, but there were too many enemies." "Who attacked you?" Minho asked. "I do not know. I did not see their faces." Yuna and Minho exchanged worried looks. If someone powerful enough to attack a royal Valari ship wanted the princess dead. The Nabi and its crew were in serious danger, but Tay simply nodded. "You're safe now. We're taking you home." "Yes, but you are human. My people will not welcome you. They will think—" She stopped, as if afraid to finish the sentence. "They will think we attacked you," Tay said. "I know. Then why would you take such a risk?" Tay did not answer. He just stood up and returned to the cockpit. As the days passed, Lyra grew stronger. She began walking around the ship, exploring its small spaces with curious eyes. Everything fascinated her. The simple human food, the strange music that Minho played on his portable speaker, the card games that Yuna taught her during long, boring hours. "This game makes no sense," Lyra complained one evening, looking at the cards in her 4 hands. "Why would the small number beat the large number?" Yuna grinned. "That's the fun of it. You never know what will happen. Among my people, games are logical, mathematical. The strongest always wins." "Sounds boring," Yuna said. Lyra tilted her head thinking about this. Then, slowly, she smiled. It was the first time any of them had seen her smile. She began spending time in the cockpit with Tay. He did not talk much, but she did not mind. She would sit in the co-pilot seat and watch the stars pass by, asking occasional questions that he answered in short, simple sentences. One night, she noticed the photograph he kept near the controls. It showed a woman with kind eyes and a small girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old. They were smiling at the camera, standing in front of a house with a garden full of flowers. "Who are they?" Lyra asked. Tay was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "My wife." "My daughter? Where are they now?" "Gone." Lyra understood what that meant. She did not ask more questions about the photograph. Instead, she asked, "Why did you really save me? Please tell me the truth." Tay kept his eyes on the stars ahead. "I told you. Because you needed help. But that is not how the universe works. Nothing is given freely. Everything has a price. My mother taught me this. Every action has a purpose, a goal. What do you want from my people? Territory. Resources? A treaty?" Tay finally turned to look at her. His eyes were tired but gentle. "I don't want anything, Lyra. You were dying. I could help. So I helped. That's all. But your life is so short. Humans live for such a small time. Why would you risk those precious years for a stranger? For someone your people consider an enemy? Maybe that's exactly why," Tay said slowly. "Because life is short. Because every moment matters. Because I've already lost people I love and I know how much it hurts. If I can stop someone else from feeling that pain, even an enemy, then the risk is worth it."
Lyra
stared at him. Among the Valeri, kindness was always political. Every gift came with expectations. Every favor required repayment. The idea of helping someone simply because they needed help, with no reward expected, was completely foreign to her. But looking at this strange, quiet human, she began to believe it was possible. "You are very different from what I was taught," she said finally. "Maybe your teachers were wrong about some things." Lyra thought about this. For a long time, on the 10th day, everything changed. Alarms suddenly filled the ship. Red lights flashed in every room. Minho's voice came through the speakers, high and scared. "Captain, Ships incoming. Big ones. Tay ran to the cockpit with Lyra close behind. Through the window, they saw them. 3 massive warships, black and gold, shaped like blades cutting through the darkness. They moved with terrible grace, surrounding the tiny Nabi-like wolves around a rabbit. Valari battle cruisers, Lyra whispered. A voice came through the communication system. It was deep and cold, speaking in the Valari language. Lyra translated, her face pale. They say we must surrender immediately. They say we have taken a member of the royal family hostage. They say if we do not comply, they will destroy our ship. Yuna grabbed Tay's arm. I told you this would happen. They think we kidnapped her. Tay looked at Lyra. Can you talk to them? Explain what really happened? I can try. But before she could speak, the Nabi shook violently. A tractor beam had locked onto them, pulling them toward the largest warship. Too late, Minho said grimly. They're taking us in.
Ow!
Tay watched as the massive Valari ship grew larger and larger in the window. He had known this might happen. He had accepted the risk when he decided to bring Lyra home. But accepting a risk and facing death were 2 different things. He took a deep breath in, prepared to meet his fate. The inside of the Valari warship was unlike anything Tay had ever seen. The walls were made of some dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Strange symbols glowed softly along the floors, pulsing like a heartbeat. Everything was tall, built for beings much larger than humans. Soldiers surrounded them the moment the Nabi landed in the docking bay. They were massive creatures, almost 3 meters tall, with silver skin and 4 arms, each carrying weapons. Their eyes burned with hatred when they looked at the humans. Remove your weapons, one soldier commanded. You will come with us. Tay raised his hand slowly. We don't have weapons. We're a cargo ship. Soldier did not believe him. They searched the humans roughly, then placed heavy metal restraints on their wrists. Lyra tried to protest, speaking rapidly in her native language, but the soldiers ignored her. Princess, please stay back, one of them said. These creatures are dangerous. They're not dangerous. They saved my life. But her words meant nothing. The soldiers pushed Tay, Yuna, and Minho forward, marching them through endless corridors. Lyra followed, arguing with anyone who would listen. But no one paid attention to her. After what felt like hours, they arrived at a massive door. It was made of gold and covered with carved images of stars and planets. 2 guards stood on either side, their faces hard as stone. The throne of stars, Lyra whispered to Tay. This is where my mother holds court, where she judges those who have committed crimes against the Empire. The doors opened. The room beyond was the most beautiful and terrifying place Tay had ever seen. It was enormous, so large that the far walls disappeared into shadow. The ceiling was not a ceiling at all, but a perfect projection of space itself, showing every star in the Valari Empire in real time. Millions of points of light hung above them, slowly moving, a map of everything the Queen controlled. And at the center of the room, on a throne made of black crystal, sat Queen Veleth. Tay had heard stories about her. Everyone had. But the stories did not prepare him for the reality. She was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, even while sitting. Her silver skin was darker than her daughter's, almost gray, like ancient metal. Her crest was fully grown, spreading from her head like a crown of blades. She had 4 eyes, 2 large ones in the normal positions, and 2 smaller ones above them. And all 4 were fixed on the humans with cold interest. She had lived for 600 years. She had watched empires rise and fall. She had commanded armies that conquered entire star systems. And now she was looking at Tay like he was an insect that had wandered into her home. A Valari male stood beside the throne. He was almost as large as the Queen, dressed in military armor covered with medals and symbols of rank. His face was twisted with disgust as he looked at the humans. Queen Veleth, he said, his voice echoing through the vast room. I present to you the humans who took your daughter. We didn't take her, Yuna said angrily. We rescued her. Soldier hit her in the back, forcing her to her knees. Silence. You do not speak in the presence of the Queen, the military Valari continued. I am Commander Orith, War General of the Valari Empire. My investigation is complete. These humans intercepted the princess's ship in neutral space. They destroyed her guards, damaged her vessel, and took her hostage. They have spent the last 10 days doing unknown things to her while pretending to bring her home. That's a lie, Minho shouted. Another soldier struck him. He fell to the ground, blood dripping from his mouth. Tay said nothing. He stood straight, his eyes fixed on the queen, waiting. Orith walked closer to the humans, looking down at them with pure hatred. Humans, short-lived, violent, primitive creatures. They breed like insects and spread across the galaxy like a disease. Of course they would attack our princess. Of course they would try to use her for their political games. He turned back to the queen. The punishment for harming Valari royalty is death. I recommend public execution. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who threaten our empire. Queen Velith had not moved during the entire speech. She had not spoken a single word. Her 4 eyes simply watched, observed, calculated. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was deep and resonant, filling the entire throne room without effort. And what does my daughter say? Everyone turned to look at Lyra. She was standing near the edge of the room, her small form trembling. But when she met her mother's eyes, something changed. Her back straightened. Her chin lifted. She walked forward, past the soldiers, past Orith, until she stood directly before the throne. Mother, she said, her voice clear and strong. Everything Commander Orith has said is wrong. Orith's face twisted with anger. Princess, you have been through a traumatic experience. These humans. My memories are clear, Lyra replied. She did not look at Orith. She kept her eyes on her mother. My ship was attacked. My guards were killed. I was wounded and dying in the wreckage. And then this human found me, she pointed at Tay. He could have left me there. He could have ignored the distress signal. He could have taken my body and demanded ransom from our empire. But he did none of those things. He saved my life. He healed my wounds with his own hands. He gave me food and shelter. He risked his life to bring me home. Lies Orith spat. Human deception. I was there, Lyra said firmly. I know what happened. This man saved me, Mother. He saved me and asked for nothing in return. The throne room went completely silent. Every eye was on the queen, waiting for her response. Queen Velith rose from her throne. It was a slow, deliberate movement, and it made her seem even larger, even more powerful. She descended the steps and walked toward the humans. Her 4 eyes studying them with ancient intelligence, she stopped directly in front of Tay, standing at her full height. She towered over him. He had to tilt his head back just to meet her gaze. Human, she said, my daughter claims you saved her life. Commander Orith claims you attacked her. One of them is lying. Tay said nothing. Speak, the queen commanded. Tell me your version of events. We found her ship destroyed in an asteroid field. She was the only survivor. I stabilized her injuries and brought her here. That's all. It cannot be all, Velith said. No one does something for nothing. What do you want? What is your true purpose? Tay looked into those ancient eyes, those eyes that had seen centuries of war and politics and betrayal. He knew that anything he said would be analyzed, questioned, searched for hidden meanings, so he told the simple truth. She was just a kid who needed help. I helped her. The queen stared at him for a long, long moment. Then she turned and walked back to her throne. This matter requires further investigation, she announced. The humans will be held in custody until I reach my decision. Commander Orith, you are dismissed. Orith opened his mouth to argue, but the look in the queen's eyes silenced him. He bowed stiffly and left the room, as soldiers led Tay and his crew away. He caught one last glimpse of Lyra. She was still standing before the throne, looking at her mother with desperate eyes, and Queen Velith was looking at him. There was something in her expression that Tay could not read, something that was not quite hatred, something that might have been curiosity. The doors closed behind him. Darkness swallowed everything. The cell was cold and dark. Tay sat on the hard metal floor, his back against the wall, his eyes closed. Yuna paced back and forth like a caged animal. Minho sat in the corner, holding his injured face. This is it, Yuna said bitterly. This is how we die. In some alien prison, executed for a crime we didn't commit? We're not dead yet, Tay said quietly. We will be. Did you see that, Commander? Orith. He wants our heads. And he has the Queen's ear. We don't stand a chance. Tay opened his eyes. Lyra spoke for us. Lyra is a child. Her mother is a 600-year-old queen who has been fighting humans for decades. Who do you think she'll believe? Tay had no answer for that. He closed his eyes again and waited. Hours passed. Maybe days? It was impossible to tell in the windowless cell. They were given water and some kind of food paste that tasted like nothing. No one came to speak to them. No one told them what was happening then. Finally, the door opened. It was not soldiers this time. It was a single Volari female, dressed in simple gray robes. She was old, her silver skin faded to almost white, her crest small and brittle. The Queen wishes to see the human captain, she said. Alone. Yuna stepped forward. Whatever you're going to do to him, you can do to all of us. The Queen wishes to see him alone, the old Volari repeated. This is not negotiable. Tay stood up. It's okay, Yuna. I'll go, Tay. Take care of Minho. I'll be back. He did not know if that was true, but he said it anyway. The old Volari led him through the ship, down corridors he had not seen before. These were different from the military sections. The walls here were decorated with beautiful art, paintings of alien landscapes, sculptures of strange creatures. This was the personal area of the royal family. They stopped before a simple door. The old Volari pressed her hand against it and it slid open. Enter, she said. The Queen awaits. Tay stepped inside. The room was small compared to the throne room, but still larger than his entire ship. Soft light came from glowing panels on the walls. In the center of the room was a table, and at the table sat Queen Velith. She looked different here. Still massive, still ancient, but somehow less intimidating. She was not sitting on a throne of black crystal. She was simply sitting in a chair like any person might. Sit, she said, gesturing to a chair across from her. Tay sat. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The Queen studied him with her 4 eyes, her expression unreadable. Tay waited. He had learned long ago that silence was sometimes the best response. Finally, the Queen spoke. I have been investigating your story. I accessed the data from your ship's computers. I read your logs. I examined your medical equipment and the supplies you used to treat my daughter. Tay nodded slowly. And what did you find? That you are telling the truth. The evidence clearly shows you found Lyra in the wreckage and saved her life. There is no sign of an attack from your vessel. No weapons capable of damaging a royal ship. No communications with any outside parties. You did exactly what you claimed. Relief washed through Tay, but he kept his face calm. Then we can go. Not yet. The Queen leaned forward. I believe your story, but I do not understand it. That is what troubles me. What don't you understand? Why? The word hung in the air like smoke. Why did you save her? You are human. We are enemies. We have been enemies for generations. Saving my daughter put you in terrible danger. You knew this, yet you did it anyway. Why? I already told you. She needed help. That is not an answer. That is an excuse humans use to hide their true motivations. The Queen's eyes narrowed. I have lived for 600 years. I have seen every form of deception, every type of manipulation. Nothing is ever given freely. There is always a price, always a reason. Tay met her gaze without flinching. Maybe that's true for your people. It's not always true for mine. Then explain it to me. Help me understand. Tay was quiet for a moment. He thought about the question, really thought about it. Then he said, have you ever lost someone you loved? The Queen's expression flickered just for an instant. I have lived 600 years. I have lost many people. Then you know how it feels. That emptiness, the pain. The wish that you could have done something, anything, to save them. Yes, I know this feeling. 12 years ago, I had a wife and a daughter. They were everything to me. My whole world. Tay's voice was steady, but there was pain beneath the words. There was a raid on our colony. Pirates. Criminals. They attacked without warning. I was on my ship away from home. By the time I got back, they were gone. The Queen was silent, listening. I couldn't save them, Tay continued. I wasn't there when they needed me. For years, I carried that guilt. It ate at me every single day. Why was I alive when they were dead? What was the point of surviving if I couldn't protect the people I loved? He looked up at the Queen. When I found Lyra in that wreckage, I saw a child dying alone in the dark. I didn't think about politics. I didn't think about rewards. I just thought about my daughter, and I thought, this time I can save her. This time I can be there. The Queen said nothing, but something in her ancient eyes had changed. It wasn't about your empire or my people, Tay said. It was about a child who needed help and a man who needed to give it. That's all. For a long time, the room was silent. The Queen sat motionless, processing his words. Tay could not tell what she was thinking. Her face was as unreadable as stone. Then she did something unexpected. She pulled out a small device and placed it on the table. A holographic image appeared above it. The photograph from Tay's cockpit, his wife and daughter, smiling in front of their home. I found this in your ship's records, the Queen said softly. I investigated its origin. I know what happened to your family. I know about the raid. I know about your military service before that. Your work as a medic, the lives you saved on the battlefield. She looked at him with those 4 ancient eyes. You have spent your whole life trying to help others. Even after you lost everything, you continued. You did not become bitter. You did not seek revenge. You simply kept helping wherever you could. Tay said nothing. What was there to say? I have watched humanity for centuries, the Queen continued. I have seen your wars, your cruelty, your endless capacity for destruction. I believed your species was dangerous, primitive, a threat to be contained. She paused. But I have never met a human like you. Someone who would risk everything for a stranger, expecting nothing in return. Someone who would carry their pain quietly and use it to help others. You have given me much to think about, Tay of the cargo ship Nabi. Perhaps my understanding of humanity has been incomplete. She walked toward the door, then stopped and looked back at him. Rest now. Tomorrow, you will stand before the court once more, and I will give my judgment. The door closed behind her. Leaving Tay alone with the holographic image of his family, he reached out and touched the light, where his daughter's face glowed. I tried, he whispered to the empty room. I hope I made you proud. The throne of stars was filled with Valari when Tay and his crew were brought before the Queen again. Hundreds of them stood in rows along the walls, nobles and officials and military leaders, all watching with curious or hostile eyes. News had spread through the empire that humans had been found with the princess. Everyone wanted to see what would happen. Commander Oreth stood near the throne, his face set in a confident smile. He believed he knew how this would end. The humans would die as all enemies of the empire eventually died. Justice would be served. Tay walked between the rows of Valari, with his head held high. Yuna was beside him, her face pale but determined. Minho followed, his injured face now bandaged. His eyes full of fear he was trying to hide. They stopped before the throne and waited. Queen Velith sat in her seat of black crystal, looking down at them with her 4 ancient eyes. She wore ceremonial robes today, dark and flowing, covered with symbols that glowed like stars. On her head, her crest stood tall and proud, marking her as the ruler of 1,000 worlds. Beside her stood Lyra. The young princess was dressed in similar robes. Smaller versions of her mother's, her face was anxious as she watched Tay and his crew. The court will come to order, a voice announced. Queen Velith will now deliver judgment on the human prisoners. The room fell silent. Every eye turned to the throne. Queen Velith rose slowly from her seat. The movement was deliberate, heavy with the weight of centuries. She descended the steps and stopped just a few meters from the humans. "I have heard the accusations," she said, her voice filling the vast room. "Commander Oreth claims these humans attacked my daughter's ship, murdered her guards, and took her hostage. He demands their execution." Oreth nodded proudly. "I have also heard my daughter's testimony. She claims these humans saved her life, healed her wounds, and brought her home at great personal risk." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "I have investigated both claims. I have examined the evidence. I have looked into the history and character of the human captain. And I have reached my decision." Oreth stepped forward. "Your Majesty, surely the evidence is clear. These humans are enemies of the Empire. They must have had some plan, some scheme. We cannot trust anything they say. Be silent, Commander." The words were quiet but sharp as knives. Oreth's mouth closed immediately. Queen Velith turned back to the humans. Her four eyes studied Tay with an expression that was impossible to read. "Tay of the cargo ship Nabi," she said. "You found my daughter dying in the wreckage of her ship. You could have left her. You could have taken her body for ransom. You could have sold information about her location to our enemies. Instead, you saved her life. You healed her wounds with your own hands. You fed her, sheltered her, and brought her across enemy space to return her to me." The room was completely silent. "You did this knowing that my empire has been hostile to your people for decades. You did this knowing that you would likely be killed the moment you crossed our border. You did this expecting nothing in return." She took another step closer to him. "I asked you why. You told me it was because she was a child who needed help. I did not believe such simple motivation could be true. I have lived too long, seen too much deception, to accept that anything could be given freely." Her voice softened, just slightly, but I was wrong. A murmur went through the crowd. Oreth's face twisted with shock and anger. "I have studied your history, Tay. I know about your family. I know about your loss. I know that you have spent your life helping others, not for reward, but simply because you believe it is the right thing to do." She turned to address the entire court. "For centuries, we have viewed humanity as a threat, a violent, primitive species to be feared and contained. We have taught our children that humans are barbaric, cruel, incapable of compassion. But this man has shown me that our understanding is incomplete." She looked back at Tay. "Humans live such short lives, barely a century if they are lucky. Every moment is precious to them. Every day matters. And yet this man, with his limited time, chose to spend 11 days crossing dangerous space to save a child who was not his own. A child whose people have been his enemies since before he was born." The queen raised one of her four hands and placed it on Tay's shoulder. The touch was surprisingly gentle. "This is not the act of a barbarian. This is the act of someone with a soul far older and wiser than their years would suggest." She stepped back and raised her voice to fill the entire throne room. "I declare the human captain, Tay, and his crew innocent of all charges. More than that, I name them Velithkin, friends of the crown. They are under my personal protection from this day forward. Any who harm them will answer to me." The crowd erupted in shocked whispers. Oreth looked like he had been struck. "Your Majesty." He protested, "This is unprecedented. To give such honor to humans, two enemies. What will the people think?" Queen Velith turned to face him, and the look in her eyes silenced him instantly. "They will think that their queen is wise enough to recognize goodness when she sees it. They will think that perhaps after centuries of hostility, it is time to reconsider our relationship with humanity." She paused. "Or they will remain silent and accept my decision. Either way, Commander, it is not your place to question me." Oreth bowed stiffly and stepped back. The queen made one final announcement. "I am ordering my ambassadors to open diplomatic talks with the human coalition. We have been enemies for too long. Perhaps it is time to try a different path." The gasps from the crowd were audible. This was not just about 3 humans on a cargo ship. This was a change in the direction of the entire empire. As the court dissolved into noise and confusion, Lyra ran forward. She threw all four of her arms around Tay and hugged him tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for everything." Tay patted her gently on the back. "Take care of yourself, kid. Try to stay out of trouble." She laughed, a bright and happy sound. "I will try. But trouble seems to find me. Then learn to be ready for it." She pulled back and looked at him with her star-filled eyes. "Will I ever see you again?" Tay smiled, a rare expression on his usually serious face. "The galaxy is smaller than you think. Maybe our paths will cross again someday." An hour later, Tay and his crew walked back to the Nabi. The ship had been fully repaired by Valari engineers. Every scratch and dent fixed, every system upgraded. It looked better than it had in years. Yuna shook her head in disbelief as she inspected the engine. "I can't believe this. We came here expecting to die, and we're leaving as honored guests of the Empire." "Life is strange," Tay agreed. Minna was already at his communication station, checking the equipment. "Captain, I'm receiving messages. Dozens of them. News about what happened has spread across the galaxy. Everyone is talking about the human who saved the Valari princess." Tay sat down in the pilot's seat. "Turn them off. We have cargo to deliver." As the Nabi lifted off from the Valari homeworld, Tay looked out at the planet below. Somewhere down there in the throne of stars, Queen Velith was watching their departure. He could not see her, but somehow he knew she was there. Yuna sat down in the co-pilot's seat. "You know you just changed the political situation of the entire galaxy, right? Humans and Valari might actually have peace now, because you couldn't say no to a hurt kid." Tay shrugged. "I just gave her a ride home." The ship accelerated into the darkness between stars, leaving the Valari system behind, and far below, in the ancient throne room. Queen Velith smiled,